Everyone, welcome to part two of the skeletal muscles. Where I wanted to start off was because I promised that I would go through and teach the muscles, actually show them anatomically on a model, the rotator cuff. So what we're going to do is actually begin that. Now I have to kind of request models and get them, and there's certain ones I can get at certain times. So one that I prefer to use, I could not gain access to because there's only two of them in the entire campus, so too limited to be borrowing to take home. But the ones we have multiple copies of. So what I'm going to be doing is going over the rotator cuff first. I'm going to do the hand today. That's one where I wish I had a different model. I don't like the model that I have with me for the muscles of the hand, so I will use a diagram for that on the exam. So as we go through this, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and subscapularis, we mentioned these were called the sits muscles. So here we have our deltoid, which we talked about before in the last lab was the deltoid. So what I'm going to do with the deltoid is we're going to remove the deltoid by lifting it off, and then we're going to be able to expose portions of our actual shoulder here, and we're seeing our rotator cuff muscles. So just for anatomical reference, this is the acromion. This is the spine of the scapula. So supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, subscapularis sits. The muscle we see here above the spine, this muscle here, this would be the supraspinatus, as it is above the spine, the supraspinatus. As we are below the spine, this muscle here is the infraspinatus. Supraspinatus references that is in the supraspinous fossa or superior to the spine of the scapula, supraspinatus. Infraspinatus referencing that it is below the spine of the scapula in the supraspinous fossa. And then here as well, we have the teres minor. Teres minor, part of the rotator cuff as well. So supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor. Now, what we also want to do is rotate this guy and look at the surface here, where the subscapular, the anterior surface of it, and in the subscapular fossa, you will find the subscapularis muscle here as well. Okay, so that is a good way of seeing that muscle, the subscapularis. So supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, subscapularis muscles of the rotator cuff. And I'm going to add on this model, I'm going to go ahead and add the deltoid back onto it. And then today, go ahead and start to kind of focus in on what it is that we're doing in today's lab or this week's lab. So this week, we're focusing on our appendages. So we're going to begin with the arm muscles, and there'll be three major muscles, and some of those muscles have multiple heads. We're going to look at the biceps brachii, the brachialis muscle, and the triceps brachii. Now, when it comes to the biceps brachii, biceps, two heads. There's a long head and a short head. So what I want to do here is to show the biceps. So first off, we're going to find our deltoid. I'm going to go ahead and remove the deltoid again so I can actually get in and begin to expose the two heads. Now, there are two heads that are shown here. One here that is coming off of the coracoid process. Here's our acromion. That would be the coracoid process. This is the clavicle. And then here we have another one going up in and up to the supraglenoid tubercle just above the glenoid fossa. This is actually, though it looks longer, is actually the short head. And this one, though it looks shorter, is the long head. The long head passes underneath and deep and continues on up to what is called the supraglenoid tubercle of the scapula. So this is actually the long head, and this is the short head, respectively, for the two heads of the biceps brachii. The biceps brachii, the muscle belly itself, as I zoom out to show it, is found here. So this muscle, biceps brachii, would be making up the anterior part of the arm. Now, brachialis, how do we find brachialis? Well, to find brachialis, what we want to do, one of the best ways to start off is find the biceps brachii, and immediately deep to it, you will find the brachialis muscle. Its name literally means arm muscle. Remember, brachial is the anatomical word that means arm. So here we have the brachialis. And if I were to take this and remove it, we are going to see our brachialis muscle here immediately deep to the biceps brachii. Okay. Now, the next one on our list is the triceps brachii with three heads. Triceps, three heads. The triceps brachii of the arm, brachial, three-headed muscle in the arm, has a lateral head, a long head, and a medial head. Now, to find these, we're going to actually to find them, we're going to rotate over here, and we're going to find this muscle here. Where there is a lateral head here, the lateral head has a tendon that passes underneath the teres minor here, and this is your lateral head, where the long head continues all the way up, long head. Now, the medial head on this model is not very accurate. They're trying to pull it out so you could see it, but it's actually underneath the lateral head and long head. But they pulled it out and made it look superficial to those. And in fact, it is deep. It's behind here. So they were trying to show portions of the head. I did double check to the model manufacturer specification, and that's what this tag man. I checked that years ago, probably nearly a decade ago, that I double checked that's what the model manufacturer was intending here. Which I'd already seen before because it was the same thing we ran into. I had the exact same model in human anatomy when I was an undergraduate. So this is supposed to be representing the medial head, but technically the medial head is deep to the long head. It is on the humerus itself. Now, with the heads with all the muscles of the arm, biceps brachialis and triceps brachii, biceps brachii, brachialis, and triceps brachii muscles, and the individual heads that have been located. Now we can turn our attention to some other muscles. Now, here's some diagrams that are in my notes as well that you can also visualize to help you guys while you are studying. And notice that I typically like to take the bones and reference them in red, and also try to show all the particular things. You can see how the medial head is deep with the triceps. Triceps brachii, long head, you can see that medial head is deep to the long head as well on this diagram. And we can see those. And again, notice you're not seeing the medial head labeled here because one should not see that. Now, the forearm muscle is going to be one of the most difficult sections that we do. And what I'm actually going to do when I do it, I'm going to list them, but I'm not going to teach it in this exact order. I am going to use some anatomical tips and tricks to help you guys visualize it better. But I am going to list them, and I'm going to break them down into two major compartments. An anterior compartment, those that are on the palm side, and the anterior compartment of forearm on the palm side are mostly flexors. So we're going to see the flexor carpi ulnaris, the flexor digitorum superficialis, the palmaris longus, the flexor carpi radialis, and then we're going to see our pronator teres and brachioradialis. Now, brachioradialis is going to kind of be my best anatomical landmark that I can give you. And with that, you're going to be able to find your way to the other ones. Now, the posterior compartment is made up mostly of extensors. The extensor carpi radialis longus, the extensor carpi radialis brevis, extensor digitorum with the communins, the so-called four tendons that extend the fingertips, or the fingers, rather, the digits. The extensor digiti minimi that extends the pinky, extensor carpi ulnaris, and the anconius. Now, what we want to do is I am going to show first the brachioradialis. And from brachioradialis, we're going to be able to use it to find all the other muscles. But I'm always going to be giving you guys the brachioradialis as kind of a landmark that we're going to work towards, okay? So we're either going to start there or work towards it. So the brachioradialis, if you were to find the thumb and come straight back, we have the brachioradialis. This comes straight back from the thumb. Brachioradialis is here. Brachioradialis, it is starts on the humerus and is on the lateral side of the forearm where the radius is. And we're going to be working this way. Now, we're going to start at the pinky finger where the medial side is and work towards the brachioradialis in an order. Now, on our notes, you will notice that it's flexor carpi radialis. So it is actually pretty well nicely laid out in that order to brachioradialis. And that's just one of the few ways I'm kind of breaking this up. So we're going to start here. We're going to start with a muscle on the anterior compartment, palmar surface. These are mostly flexors. This muscle here, the most medial muscle, furthest away on the anterior compartment of the forearm, away from brachioradialis, is a muscle called the flexor carpi ulnaris. So flexor of the wrist at the ulna. Flexor carpi ulnaris. So this muscle here helps to flex the wrist. We can take and, for example, it can pull and help do this, or it can help flex as well. So what we're going to see, flexor carpi ulnaris. Next, we have flexor digitorum superficialis. This is a muscle who flexes digits. Now, there is a flexor digitorum muscle that is deeper, referred to as a profundus, but we do not learn it in this course, but it does exist because in anatomy we don't use words we don't need. So there is a deeper flexor of the digits. This is the flexor digitorum superficialis. On top of that is the flexor here at the wrist called the palmaris longus. Palmaris longus goes towards the wrist here, forming this tendon. Usually you can see the palmaris longus tendon. And goes into the palm, forming a palmar fascia, which we can't see here. And once we have the palmaris longus, we now have our flexor carpi radialis. The flexor carpi radialis muscle here, attached to the base of the thumb, flexor carpi radialis, flexes the wrist at the radius, more lateral. It can help do that, or inflection. And then our pronator teres. It pronates. Now remember, pronation, if this muscle here were to pull, it would help to do that. Okay? Pronator teres. All right. Now, the brachioradialis was our last that's our landmark. Once we go from pronator teres, we're back to brachioradialis. And brachioradialis, so if you can go from flexor carpi ulnaris, the flexor digitorum superficialis, palmaris longus, flexor carpi radialis, and pronator teres towards the brachioradialis. Now at the thumb and brachioradialis, I'm gonna turn it around this way, just so I can more easily get these muscles into view. Brachioradialis, we're gonna start on the lateral side and work medially on the anterior compartment of the forearm, which are mostly extensors. So we're going to start with the extensor carpi radialis longus and extensor carpi radialis brevis. Now, brachioradialis is here. And if we move medially on the anterior side, the back of the hand side, with the brachioradialis, you have a muscle extensor, extends, carpi, the wrist, extensor carpi radialis longus. This muscle is far longer than this one here, the extensor carpi radialis brevis. So extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis. Now we're going to skip these muscles here, the part of the anatomical snuff box that we don't learn. And then we're going to look at this extensor here called the extensor digitorum. And it gives a tendon that becomes 4 tendons of the hand. 1, 2, 3, 4 digit extensors here. 1, 2, 3, 4 tendons on the hand that extend the digits. So this is extensor digitorum. Now to extend the pinky, which we weren't counting here, this was the extensor digiti minimi. The pinky finger is called the digiti minimi or digiti quinti. And there's a muscle here in the forearm that extends the pinky. So if you're going to extend the pinky, like when you're drinking a fancy cup of tea, put that pinky out. Extensor digiti minimi. Now we are here at the most medial side, extensor carpi ulnaris. Ulnaris. Extensor carpi ulnaris. Which leads us to the anconius. Anconius muscle at the elbow is the anconius. Anconius here at the elbow. So, from the brachioradialis, we have extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis, extensor digitorum, extensor digiti minimi, extensor carpi ulnaris, and the anconius. And that finishes our forearm to be able to see all those muscles. Now, what I do want to do when I discuss the hand is I do not like the model that I have here. That arm model does really good for all the different muscles we were talking about. And I even took a photograph here that I give you guys labeled just to show the extensor digiti minimi. It is not labeled in the textbook. Images that I have on any of them, I've been through the images from the book. I strive to take the book and delete any superfluous muscles so that only the muscles you're required to know are on any images, and these are to help you to kind of understand where they are. As I kind of make what I like, I kind of make my PowerPoints like an anatomy atlas, and then I teach you guys on the models or diagrams I'm going to test on. Now, one of the things I do want to show you guys is the hand muscles. The abductor, remember abduction is to take things away. So the abductor pollicis brevis, remember that abductor AB is in it. So the abductor pollicis has brevis in it. We do have one that has a brevis, abductor pollicis brevis. That means there's an abductor pollicis longus. It's in a different area. It's in that area I mentioned called the anatomical snuff box. The adductor pollicis, the flexor pollicis brevis, and opponens pollicis, which does opposition. These muscles tell you that they do something to the thumb. Pollicis references the pollex or thumb, digit number 1. Now, as we go through the pollex, if you look here on this model, this diagram, you can also see the communins here, 1, 2, 3, 4 tendons, giving rise here, 1, 2, 3, 4 tendons, 1, 2, 3, 4 tendons, and these things split off, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see these two here, continue on. Then there's a bifurcation of this one. This one splits. This one goes off here. This one bifurcates under the extensor retinaculum. Okay, so we want to make sure we can see the adductor, the one that would add to it. If this muscle contracted, it would pull the thumb towards the index finger. The flexor pollicis brevis, this flexes our thumb, okay? Flexion of the thumb. When you flex the thumb, now adduction of the thumb is moving the thumb towards like the finger, but when we flex, kind of think like you are pushing down on a button. Opponent's pollicis does opposition. That means it can take the thumb and move it across the palm or towards the fingertips. And the abductor pollicis brevis abducts the thumb, moves the thumb up like when you're hitching a ride, putting your thumbs up. The flexor pollicis brevis, one as he flexes, like I said, pushes down like if you're going to mash down a button. Okay, now the hip. Now, I've got to go over here and grab it. I couldn't keep it on the table that easily, so I'm going to grab this model really quickly here. And very big model is our leg model. I do have almost all hip muscles visible on it, with exception of the gluteus minimus. This model only depicts the gluteus maximus and gluteus medius. In the hip, there's the gluteal muscles, or gluteus muscles, in the lower extremity in the hip, and the gluteus maximus, the gluteus medius, and gluteus minimus. And actually, the maximus, medius, and minimus, small, medium, and large, is kind of like how you can take a small cup, stick it inside of a medium cup. Then take a medium cup and stick it inside of a large cup and they nest in. Well, it goes in like that. On the outside, it's the maximus. Underneath that, you would find the medius, and then inside that's the minimus. Kind of like you taking a small cup, sticking it inside of a medium cup, and then taking the medium cup, holding the small cup inside of it, and putting that inside of a large cup, where you have 3 layers. Then we're going to see the tensor fascia latae and the iliotibial tract. So as we begin, what we want to do is first look at the gluteus muscles. And on this model, we could see the gluteal muscles in this area, this region. This is gluteus maximus, the largest of those. And to take this off sometimes takes some hard work to pull that off. There we go. And underneath that, we will find the gluteus medius. Now, the minimus is directly deep to this, but we can't see it on this model. The minimus is under there. This is not minimus. This is a muscle that sometimes people do have issues with as it passes over the sciatic nerve. It's very common that this can actually cause some sciatic nerve issues, and you need to stretch your rotator, hip rotators, those lateral rotators. And then we have some like the gemellus muscles and things inside here, quadratus femoris, and other muscles that you guys may have to learn if you go to deeper stuff. But right now, we only know that we have our gluteus maximus, our gluteus medius, and minimus is under that. Now, I'm going to show you guys a diagram here to help you to visualize this as well, just so I could show you these. So the maximus is the most superficial and external. Underneath that's the medius, and then deep inside is the gluteus minimus. There's a maximus, medius, and minimus, large, medium, and small from the outside in. Now, the tensor fascia latae. To find tensor fascia latae, the TFL, what we want to do is find our gluteus maximus, go over here more anteriorly, and right here we have the tensor fascia latae. Tensor fascia latae. Okay. Now, iliotibial tract. To find the iliotibial tract, or IT band here, come down from the tensor fascia latae. This is the fascia that it tenses, called the iliotibial tract. This is a very common area for irritation of runners. IT band pain. So this is the IT band. Now, also what we want to see is our so that's all of our leg parts there, the hip anyway, is iliotibial tract, sometimes called the IT band. Now, as we run into these deep muscles of the hip, showing you the gluteus is from a different perspective, from a posterior view there, I always like to try to give variety of views. And now we want to turn our attention to the thigh. We're going to start at the gracilis. It grows slender. If someone is gracile, they're slender. Gracilis will start off at the top and taper downwards, growing slender. The pectineus is here. I could actually remember when I was when I applied for the current position that I hold as a faculty member. One of our one of our longest serving anatomy faculty during my interview, because I taught for 4 years as an adjunct in our anatomy labs, and they asked me, they said during my interview was, on what model is the pectineus best seen? And I remember asking him, well, please give me your definition of best. Do you mean largest or the least encumbered, things like that? I said, and I said, well, if you're looking for the largest view, it's the leg models. If you're looking for the most unencumbered view, you'd be thinking about our muscle figures that I used last week. So yeah, they just want to make sure that I was familiar with where everything was as an instructor and what could be seen to do what. So it's kind of always what about the pectineus. It always brings back that memory of me applying for a job. So our gracilis, our pectineus, our adductor longus and adductor magnus. Longus meaning it's long, lengthy. Magnus is representing its size. Like magnum is a large size bullet with a heavier load, heavier powder load. Or one might say it actually comes from the magnum wine bottles and champagne bottles, where it actually gets its name, is a larger container of vintage material, of wine. There's the iliopsoas, which P is silent, so it's psoas major, not psoas. The P is silent, psoas major, and the iliacus or iliacus make up the iliopsoas muscle group. Then we'll see the sartorius. Now, let's start off by looking at gracilis. Gracilis is going to be best seen on a medial side of the thigh. So we're looking at the lateral side where the IT band is, or iliotibial tract. Now we want to rotate to a medial view, making sure that I'm zoomed out, and you will see the gracilis here, growing slender. The gracilis. That was the first one on our list. Next on our list, we have the pectineus. Now to see pectineus, we want to find this place right here where the vein, artery, and nerve is, where the van is. There's always a vein, artery, nerve, neurovascular bundles. And right there where the vein is, that's pectineus. That's actually the largest we're ever going to be able to see pectineus on any models, is right here, is the pectineus. Now, the adductor longus and adductor magnus. The longus and the magnus. Let me help you guys find that. The longus and magnus. Now, the longus is right here's the longus. Anterior to the gracilis, you will find the adductor, A-D-D, ductor, adductor longus. The magnus passes underneath the gracilis, starting here and coming out here. To also see it, I'm going to remove this thin strap muscle, and you will notice that the number here and the number here are the same. These are the same muscle. This is the adductor magnus. Now, placing this muscle back, I will come back to it in just a few minutes. but we're going to be talking about the iliopsoas. Now, the iliopsoas is seen here, next part of it. This is the iliopsoas. This is where we will see it coming into the leg, right here next to where the pectineus is, where this nerve is, and where this strap is. If I remove the strap, we can then see this is the iliopsoas muscle right here underneath the strap. Now, with the strap, that's where we turn our attention next, is the strap. It's the sartorius. Now, the sartorius kind of reminds me of the sash you might wear in a beauty pageant. So in my class, I'm always call this Miss Sartorius with her sash. I was like, there she is, Miss Sartorius. The sartorius is like a little sash one will wear. This is the sartorius. It's the longest muscle there that we have. Sartorius. Now, sartorius, that ends our muscles of the thigh. Now, as we go into the iliopsoas, this diagram here would have to be used for me to show you the iliacus or iliacus, along with the psoas major that combines together to form iliopsoas. And I showed you that as we came in on the model. Now, the deal is this is normally the model that I use to depict this is our torso model. Now, the torso model, we have 4 of those in each of our labs, but it is too large for me to bring out. I basically have like a limit on the size and things like that. The leg model is the largest model I'm allowed to remove from the lab during COVID. So normally I would use entirely models because we have a good selection of anatomical teaching models in our laboratories. One of the benefits of teaching there. So, and there's only one instructor right now who's teaching on site, and his class is only got like apparently has lost a lot of people, and I don't think it's that person's fault necessarily. So I just know that there's been a lot of people leaving, and I think retention online right now is kind of best. I think a lot of people do not feel safe being on campus. But I know that right now one of you who is listening to this actually works our COVID screening process every day. One of my students in the class I'm recording this is there. So thank you guys for your hard work. So, like I said, I really hope this has helped you guys to feel safer, and me making sure that I'm providing you an education that is as equivalent as possible to being in the classroom has been my goal this entire term. All right, so now we want to turn our attention to the quadriceps. Now, on this, I'm always this has been like a thing I've been doing is just cutting down the sizes of some of the people have kind of it's a standard thing. I'm trying to make everything standardized right now. But anyway, let's talk about the quadriceps. Now, I see the quadriceps as like a hot dog. Now, we're going to see the rectus femoris is going to be like a hot dog, the Frankfurter, the hot dog wiener. And then the vastus part of a hot dog is the bun. So the vastus muscles will make the hot dog bun. The vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and vastus intermedius. Now, let's begin with the rectus femoris, our hot dog. One of my students that used to tutor for my classes, tutor my students, used to call this the femur wiener. So to find this best, I'm going to remove the sartorius. And we're going to point to the rectus femoris. She used to call it the femur wiener. The rectus femoris is like a hot dog sitting on a bun. So our hot dog here, the rectus femoris, is sitting in a bun. The vastus part of the hot dog is the bun. Now, find the big toe on this model. Here's the big toe, making this the medial side. So I'm going to keep this aligned medially, making this the vastus medialis. This is our vastus medialis. This is the vastus lateralis. And between the two, under all this tissue, is the vastus intermedius, making up the hot dog bun that we would take the rectus femoris, femur wiener, and put it on. Easier said than done when you're not. There we go. Let me do this. There we go, off camera so I don't embarrass myself. So that is our quadriceps. Quadriceps has four components: the rectus femoris, vastus medialis, lateralis, and intermedius muscles. Okay, now this leaves us our foot, and we're lower leg than foot. So as we go through, let's look at the hamstring. Well, I forgot about the back of the leg. Our hamstring. Our hamstring group are flexors. Our biceps femoris are semitendinosus and semimembranosus. So our biceps femoris muscle will be the more lateral. Now, I'm going to help you guys kind of find your way here. So to make sure we are in the lateral position, find the pinky toe. And then on that same side, we have our biceps femoris. Biceps femoris seen here. Now, over here, we have a semitendinosus and semimembranosus. The tendinosus tops the membranosus. Semitendinosus, semimembranosus. The biceps femoris, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus muscles combine make our hamstring group that flexes our leg. Now, also what we want to do is turn our attentions now to the lower leg. And the lower leg, we want to find, now I always call this the Tom, Dick, and Harry relationship. If you guys live in America, you always say, hey, they let any old Tom, Dick, and Harry in here. We're going to see the tibialis anterior, extensor digitorum longus, and extensor hallucis longus muscles, the extensor hallucis longus. I didn't have extensor in front of the hallucis longus there, being the muscles that we're talking about, Tom, Dick, and Harry. So let me show you guys Tom, Dick, and Harry. So these muscles are located on the front of the leg. Now, Tom, Dick, and Harry. Tom, Dick, and Harry. Tibialis anterior, Tom, Dick, extensor digitorum longus, and then Harry, and I always say he's stuck in the middle between a hairy situation, where the extensor digitorum longus, the extensor hallucis longus is between that and the tibialis anterior. Now, Tom, Dick, and Harry. Now, the fibularis or peroneus longus and fibularis or peroneus brevis muscles, we're going to take a look at here, the fibularis longus and brevis. Fibularis longus forms this component, and then fibularis brevis forms that side of the tendon. On this side of the tendon, we have fibers running an angle on the side of the tendon. That is the fibularis or peroneus brevis. And at the top, coming and converging onto the tendon, we have the fibularis longus or peroneus longus. Now, another way to remember these is take Ethan fishing. Tibialis anterior, extensor digitorum longus, and fibularis longus. Take Ethan fishing. Take Ethan fishing. If you were somebody wanted you to go take their son Ethan fishing, spend some time with them. Now, lastly, we want to look at the calf muscles, the soleus and gastrocnemius. Now, soleus references that it's a very flat and thin muscle, and the gastrocnemius will be on the outside. The soleus and gastrocnemius muscles makes the calf. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show gastrocnemius first, as it is the most superficial. Underneath that, if I were to remove the medial head here of the gastrocnemius, you will actually be able to see, pull this off, the soleus here, and we can actually see a muscle here, a tendon here. Let's see, gosh, now I'm trying to remember the name of this tendon. We always called it the freshman nerve. And gosh, I just forgot the name of it. We called it the freshman nerve. It's been a while since human anatomy. I just forgotten the guy's name. This is the soleus, which is under that. And if I remember the freshman nerve's name, guys, I'll look it up. Plantaris muscle, I want to say. It's the plantaris tendon. Okay. So the gastrocnemius and soleus. In A&P2, I call this the second heart because it's so important in muscular compression as a muscular pump to aid in venous return to the heart. So 1 second, and I'm going to do something. Sorry, I was double checking that. Yes, the freshman nerve is the plantaris muscle. I went and double checked myself. I had to jog my memory, and that is hard to do sometimes when you're in here trying to teach. And I sometimes get a little excited seeing things that I was also studying when I was a student some time ago. It's been a while. I mean, I started graduate school in 2007, so that tells you a little how old I am. Okay, now our last things we're going to be looking at is the foot and then the pelvic floor. So the foot, as we talk about the muscles of the hamstring, we've done that. The foot is where we're going to turn ourselves to now. Flexor digitorum brevis and abductor digiti minimi. Now, to find the flexor digitorum brevis, this muscle is found deep underneath the plantar fascia of the foot. So right here, you're actually seeing the flexor digitorum brevis muscle here underneath this component of plantar fascia. When the plantar fascia there are several nerves that are around here that are heavily irritated by inflammation of plantar fascia. Plantar fasciitis can definitely be caused. Some people try to stretch that too much, but it's caused by damage, so stretching isn't really the answer here. Icing, things like that are great. Rest, ice, compression, elevation, rice. Trying to get this guy to rest because it has been irritated. But just a little clinical bit there. So this is where the flexor digitorum brevis. Now the abductor digiti minimi on the side where the pinky is, abductor digiti minimi. All right, and that finishes off that model. Now, where I am going to spend the rest of my time is looking at the pelvic floor. Pelvic floor will be diagram only. I do not have a model here that does pelvic floor. We have one model with a removable pelvic floor. One of our torsos has a removable pelvic floor, and you can see all the pelvic floor muscles. The bubospongiosus and the ischiocavernosus muscles, which are going to look different in males and females. Levator ani and external anal sphincter will not. There will be no differences distinctively for the males and females there. So as we look at it, starting off with the female, you will see the ischiocavernosus here, lying laterally to the bubospongiosus, which surrounds the vagina. where the levator ani here, which is actually made of a pubococcygeus and ischio-coccygeus muscles, form the bottom of pelvic floor here. These help to lift the anus, external anal sphincter. Now, sorry, I should have, there we go. One of these days, I'll learn how to use PowerPoint. So, now, in the male, the bubospongiosis and ischiocavernosus here. Bubospongiosis is used in producing force of ejaculation and squeezing the last drops of urine out in the male, but the levator ani and the external anal sphincter muscles are really no different in the males and females. There's the deep musculature there are no different, but the bubospongiosis and the ischiocavernosus have some differences anatomically because of the functionality. Now, where we did today is biceps brachii. Remember, has two heads of origin, both on the scapula. One's on the coracoid process, one's on the supraglenoid tubercle. They insert on the radius, actually on the radial tuberosity. And it flexes the forearm. It supinates the forearm, which makes supination quite a powerful movement. So if you're ever having to wrench open a jar, make sure that when you turn the jar to open it, you can supinate it. If you're trying to twist it, make sure you can supinate it, because supination is very strong because of the biceps brachii. Then it also flexes the arm. Flexing the arm would be like bringing the arm up, the whole arm. Flexing the forearm is like when you're doing a biceps curl. Now, brachioradialis, it originates off the humerus, distal ends of the humerus, inserts on the radius near the styloid process of the radius, and extends your forearm. It is flexes the forearm. Sorry, I said extends the forearm. It flexes the forearm. Now, the triceps is what extends. Sorry. I know I'm just, it's been a long day. I've already taught my full load for the day. Now I'm doing this after my office hours. The triceps brachii has origins off the scapula and the humerus, because I mentioned the medial head comes off the humerus, where the long head and lateral head come off the scapula. The ulna itself is its insertion, actually on the olecranon process, and it extends the forearm. This is our primary extensor. And on the thigh, our gluteus maximus, remember, it originates off the ilium, sacrum, and coccyx, inserts on the iliotibial tract and the femur, and this guy extends the thigh and medially rotates the thigh. Okay? Extends and medially rotates the thigh. Extends means it takes your thigh and pushes and puts the leg, the foot back to the ground by extension. Okay? Which would also include some hyperextension as well. Now, on these, I do recommend this is a good place for flashcards. I will test on those at least 3 minimum on multiple choice section. 3 minimum, could be 4. I don't exactly know how many are going to be on there since I'm finishing off the exam as I speak today. I'll be finishing off later today, hopefully. And but I am adding new multiple choice questions to it. So remember, this is 30 identifications and 20 multiple choice questions. All right. So, guys, since I did change some things for this semester, I'm trying to keep everything. That's actually my preferred. Like all my A&P2 exams, all A&P2 lab exams are 30-20. 30 identifications, 20 multiple choice, and I really like it. All right, so these are the outlines there of things. So as you are studying, if you guys have my lab for the semester during fall 2020, and you are logging in onto my lab, let me just really quickly Hemodynamic and Physiology I-55 lab. This is the lab that's listening to this UJA. Please note that I had the muscles photos labeled there as well, which you can download and utilize, where I've labeled every muscle that we have to know on the models, including all the other models that I'm not using because of COVID. And so just make note during my two lectures as to the diagrams and models that I'm using. Guys, this concludes my video on this section. So that means if you're listening to this, the next week is your exam dealing with the skeletal muscles, and then we'll be moving into 2 weeks of the nervous system. Just note that your lab exam schedule, if you're is posted here onto your D12 page. So, if you guys need me, please don't hesitate to reach out. But thank you guys so much, and I look forward to see how well you do on this exam next week. Thank you. Have a great day. Have a great week. Please reach out.